Hello and welcome to Episode 3 of Non-Mainstream Dad. My name is Morgan Jones. This show is devoted to talking about responsible non-monogamy and alternative lifestyles, mainly, but there will be a little deviance and adventure in our topics, I promise. My plan is for the series is to walk through the progression of learning if poly is right for you, and or if your relationship will handle it. We'll discuss some of the considerations, pitfalls, and joys of living life this way. The name of today's episode, and I apologize for the grammar, but it's actually the most unspecific person tense that I can get it. How do you be poly? In episode 2, I began exploring some of the motivations for why I'm poly. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some of the hows of becoming poly. Throughout this episode, I'm going to be bringing up terms that we'll go into finer details on later. So if there's something I don't say I'll be covering in a future episode, please drop me a note in the comments and I'll do what I can to cover it. Once again, my disclaimer. I'm not a researcher or a sex therapist. I'm not doing this because of my doctorate or research, nor do I claim to be a sex therapist in any way. No offense to anyone who comes from those backgrounds. I'm a person who works hard as a sex educator from personal experience and concern. I decided to start making these episodes to share some of the life and relationship experiences I've gathered over my life. I've made my share of mistakes. I hope you learn from me and hopefully avoid mine. So you'll want to become poly, or are and you don't know how to start acting on it. How? Well, that depends on a lot of stuff. The journey all starts based on what your relationship status is and what your end goal is. If you're single, it's a completely different journey than if you're in a committed relationship. When you're single, it can be hard because there's a tougher starting point, and theoretically, there's less support when you're in than when you're in a existing relationship. You can run into great barriers and issues with self-identification, as well as some folks having the misnomer and prejudice stuck in their head that you can't be polyamorous without at least one partner. I call bullshit. First, poly is self-identifying, so immediately wrong. Secondly, polyamory is mostly about a mindset, a lifestyle, and a commitment to being open-hearted. It's not a relationship status, it's a relationship style and philosophy description. So, whatever. When you're poly and single, the biggest challenge can be finding partners who don't think that it's a stage or something you'll get over and eventually just be monogamous with only them. These folks are hard to avoid. They put on a great show. Sometimes they don't even realize they're misleading you. Sometimes they're lying to themselves that they really think that eventually they don't want an eventually monogamous relationship. You end up finding out different throughout the road, and it's not always their fault. Sometimes these folks have every bit of awareness of what they're doing. I'm only going to be a little judgy because everyone has their battles. But at the same time, I always encourage self-awareness about what you are and what you aren't okay with dealing with in a relationship. Especially an established relationship, when things change, or decisions are made that somebody's not okay with anything, with something being that way anymore. At this point, I'll mention that every poly relationship is similar to any mono relationship, and that there are red flags to avoid, manipulations to dispel, and abusive personalities lurking everywhere to take advantage and feed their own needs. So if you're single and poly and want to date, cool. I'll have another episode where we start going into deeper, but for right now we need to start thinking about a few things. First, you need to be honest with people, be upfront with anyone you meet in your search or are potential partners that you are poly. One of the first and main questions I get asked is, when is a good time to tell new people you're poly? My answer is as immediately as you know there's a potential for you for involvement. Otherwise, there's a possibility that you could be misleading that person into thinking that you are the general societal relationship model. and you're monogamous, people get very attached to their assumptions and will feel betrayed that you're not what they want you to be. Honestly, that applies to everything, but yeah. Okay, so you're single poly, and you're trying to meet folks, and you start to, and they're all cool with it. And some of them are like, hey, sure, that sounds cool, me too. I'm going to date others too. And then there are some that are like, okay, that's fine for you, but I'll only be dating you. And when that's successful, those folks are termed monopoly, which means they're monogamous with people who are poly and are okay with it. And that's good. They are out there. And then there will be the people that constantly struggle with your choice and make it hellish trying to convert you to the way they want you to be. First off, anytime someone starts to try and initiate a change in you without your prior agreement or consent, it's bullying, manipulative, and controlling. Huge red flag. Run. Anytime someone wants you to change yourself to make them happy, it's not likely to work, and you're not likely going to do it. You're likely going to resent them in the long run and revert, because you're only going to do it for the duration of the relationship and while they're trying to make you change, especially if you don't want to. If a person cares about you, they will accept you. I always say love is unconditional, relationships are not. You really have to weigh what is acceptable in your relationships. I'll be doing an episode later about single poly and go into more depth about some of the issues you encounter and the possible solutions to some of those situations. Okay, so deciding to become poly when you're in a relationship is a very different ball of sticky wax. When you're in a relationship, you decide to be poly, it's a change to the expected and it's a change to the accepted patterns of the relationship. This in itself is hugely disruptive. However, if you're opening the can of worms, go for it. It can come up for a variety of reasons, but I will tell you this ahead of time. If you have issues in your relationship that aren't directly related to things that you can solve by having other partners like sex drive or things like that, it will not fix your relationship in any way. Poly is a web of relationships. You can't fix problems in a relationship by replacing the relationship, and it doesn't help when you add a relationship. It just adds more relationships, and the problems can and will migrate to the new relationship if they aren't dealt with in relationships. Relationships. As an already established couple, you have a lot of work ahead of you. There are a lot of things about your relationship you're going to have to look really hard at and decide what is okay and what isn't okay to include other people in. First, you have to decide if you're going to pursue others independently, if you're going to require a package deal. A package deal is where if you're involved with one partner, you have to be involved with the other partners in the relationship. This can apply to a single with a member of a couple or a couple that has started seeing a couple. This gets really sticky and emotionally volatile at times because there are occasionally issues with partners feeling they don't get equal attention, and then it just gets squirrely. I'll cover this more in an episode on triads and quads. Theoretically, it creates an equal ground for everyone. In reality, it creates a weapon to use against other partners and attention-seeking and relationship manipulation. No one wants to feel left out, and usually in this case, there are conjoined issues with couples privilege where the couple can leave a single partner out in the cold and emotionally isolated. Like holidays, trips, social life things. While it can cause issues within a poly relationship, it still has a reason for existing. It's a hot topic in relationship anarchy emotionally and otherwise. The bad connotation for couples privilege comes from an exclusionary attitude towards rights, feelings, and concerns where other partners are concerned, and theoretically lack of consideration of non-primary partners. The positive side to it is that it allows for the core relationship to maintain stability through a higher level of focus. The truest thing about couples privilege is that it is always something you never notice until you're on the outside looking in. If you've decided to pursue poly as individuals instead of as a package deal, you're not out of the clear yet. You have to be even more vigilant about your couples privilege and making sure your partners are getting what they agreed to while making sure you give your other partners what they've agreed to as well. You have to prepare for scenarios that you think outlandish, or you may think it's better to keep an open framework where you think tediously discuss every single fucking thing as they occur. Not my bag of tea. I suggest establishing a framework. Relationships are about agreements. They're about communicating needs and wants and expectations. They're about verbal and written contracts and doing what is agreed to or dealt with, and then the agreed to contract terms not being met. We'll continue in depth in our next episode titled Negotiating Poly in a Relationship. Thank you for watching Non-Mainstream Dad. My name is Morgan Jones. Please turn into our next episode and please subscribe. You can get updates as we take our journey. Please feel free to leave comments or ask questions and I'll do my best to respond in the comments, or you may even inspire an episode in response. See you next time.